Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be completely silent at a temperature of 30 degrees below zero? Could you imagine what it would be like to go to sleep with the knowledge that the wind outside could bring your shelter down before dawn? Tonight, we are going to rewind to a time when to simply close your eyes and go to sleep required a certain amount of silent bravery. To survive in the Wild West during the Ice Age, it was necessary to have more than simply food and fire. The delicate and expensive art of sleep was the subject of this discussion. Before we go on this solitary journey through the grasp of winter on the border, I would want to ask for a small favor. I would appreciate it if you would click the like button tonight if you would like to go back in time with me. Ensure that you subscribe to this channel so that you can take part in these late-night excursions into the obscure corners of history for the rest of your life. Leave a comment below. Please let me know what time it is if you are watching it and where you are located. It is possible that some of you are beginning your morning, that others are awake in the stillness of the night, or that you are somewhere in the between of these two extremes. It is now time to lower the lights and activate a gentle fan in order to generate a soothing background hum. As we prepare for tonight's peaceful historical trip, let's make ourselves comfortable. Imagine that you are standing on the plains of Wyoming in the month of January in the year 1872. There's a thin, colorless sheet that is known as the sky, and it is located between heaven and earth. Over the course of the last 3 days, there has been constantly dropping snow. In the beginning, it is calm, but winds that seem to be coming from a great distance beyond the horizon have caused it to move in a westerly direction. The nearest town is located many miles distant. Your hut, if you can even call it that, is made up of rough hewn timbers that have been chinked with whatever moss and muck you could locate before the earth became completely frozen. Tonight, just like on other winter evenings out here, your sole purpose is to go to sleep, to relax your sore body, and to wake up when the light from the dawn shines through the gaps in your walls. This is the only objective you have tonight. However, it is never simple to have a good night's sleep here at this hour. You will find that your days at the border follow a rhythm that is incredibly constant and follows the sun. Getting up before the sun rises is the only option available to you at this point. As the night progressed, the fire was reduced to embers, and nothing remained of it. In addition, if you do not immediately bring it up to temperature, the cold will penetrate your bones to the point where it will be painful for you to move. The atmosphere in your cabin is thick with the smell of your breath. Your home consists of a single room, and the walls of that room are completely covered in ice. The rough wood is embellished with beautiful ice designs that are reminiscent of the decoration that winter itself creates. Your boots are still stiff from the cold where you left them by the fireplace, despite the fact that you have made every effort to put them on. It is necessary to warm your feet before they can be accommodated within. Over the course of the night, the leather turned into a frozen solid texture. Furthermore, you are aware from your own personal experience that putting your feet in boots that are frigid can result in frostbite developing on your feet. Consequently, you wait while squatting close to the fire that you are attempting to reignite, feeding it and adding fuel to it in order to ignite it gradually. On account of the fact that there is a growing scarcity of firewood. This is the way that each day begins. You hold this memory with you throughout your entire waking life, and you never forget it, with the knowledge that you will have to go through the entire process once more tonight. That in order to relax, you must first do the necessary preparations. A laborious process has emerged from the act of sleeping. Let's investigate what it means to seek comfort in the midst of the bitterly cold winter that we are experiencing in the untamed West. Despite the fact that it could just as easily be in Dakota, Wyoming, or the high country of Colorado, your cottage is located on a tiny claim in the territory of Montana. It is true that the walls are constructed of logs, but because they were chopped down so rapidly during the limited building season, they have an uneven settling design. As a result, there are now gaps between them, some of which are as big as your finger. Despite the fact that you tried to stuff them with mud, moss, old rags, and even pages torn from the few books you possessed, the wind still manages to make its way through them. During the night, when you are lying on your small bed, you may feel the draft on your face. It is similar to the sensation of cold fingers exploring in the dark. Rough planking forms the basis of the roof, which is then covered in multiple layers of sod. The weight of the sod increases whenever it rains or snows. You may find that the sound of water dripping in the corners of the room is enough to wake you up at times. Sometimes you may find that your quilt is covered in minuscule fragments of frozen earth. In the worst weather, the entire roof freezes into a solid mass, which is a good thing. But it also means that any heat from your fire rises to the surface and melts the underside just enough to keep the air above you always wet. This is a situation that should be ideal. One and only one window is present. Glass is not present. Glass is difficult to obtain and expensive. Paper that has been oiled has been stretched over a frame in order to cover the opening. During the day, it allows light to enter. That is a light that is watery and pale. It is just one more avenue for the cold to make its way inside during the night. By putting a piece of canvas over it, you have provided an additional layer of protection against the icy weather that is emanating from the outside. Your bed is not a bed, and people from the eastern cities would not recognize it as such. With ropes organized in a grid across the surface of the basic wooden frame, a thin mattress that is filled with straw and prairie grass is placed on top of the frame. Even though it seemed like a problem that might arise in the distant future, you picked the grass yourself during the summer of last year when the ground was warm. As you lie on it night after night, you are able to fully experience each stem and stalk. Because of your weight, the straw has collapsed. The amount of cushioning it provides is significantly less than you had imagined. What lies beneath everything is the floor, which is also beneath the frame and the cables. Rough planks that allow the cool soil to air upward via the crevices between them in order to maintain a comfortable warmth. There are evenings when it feels as though the cold is coming down from the ceiling or rising through the floor more fiercely than it is falling from the ceiling. The wool blankets you have are not only thick and substantial, but they also have a somewhat moist and scratchy texture. Due to the fact that dampness is always there, the remarkable capacity of wool to keep you warm even when it is wet is a blessing. When your breath condenses in the air and falls to the covers, it transforms into minuscule crystals that are frozen in place. The frost had frozen the edges of your covers by the time morning arrived here. During the winter of 2 years ago, a passing hunter also presented you with a buffalo robe. Despite the fact that it is thick as sin and smells of smoke, ancient animals, and the tanning process that caused it to be preserved, it has a heat that is unparalleled. When you are going through the most difficult nights, you pile everything you own on top of yourself. There's still a cold breeze blowing in, despite the fact that you are wearing a buffalo robe, a coat, additional gear, and wool blankets. At this point, you are aware that sleep is more about feeling weary than it is about feeling comfortable. An individual begins the process of getting ready for sleep several hours before they actually lie down to sleep. You begin the process of carefully limiting your firewood at 4 o'clock, just as the light of the afternoon begins to fade. This occurs early in the winter when the sun is beginning to give way to the temperature. It is never enough, despite the fact that there is a pile outside against the wall of the cabin, which is on the other side of you. As a result of the limited number of trees in this area, the wood that is readily available is typically wet or green. Furthermore, because it requires preparation to locate good, dry firewood, there is seldom enough there. Over the course of the brief summer months, while you were attempting to cultivate food, fix things, and do all of the other 100 things that are necessary for survival, you did not have time for it. As a result, you give the flames a gentle feed, just enough to keep the chill from hitting you. The quantity that is required to just warm the pot of weak soup in preparation for your supper is sufficient. Snow melt water, dry beans, and if you're lucky, a little salt pork are the ingredients that you'll need. Although you are seated by the fireplace, you take your time eating as you take in the sensation of the warmth on your face and the chill on your back. Due to the fact that it is too little and doesn't have adequate sealing, the cabin will never be uniformly warm. In any location, there are zones, such as the heat zone, that is located close to the fire. Once you have finished your lunch, you tend to the minor details that have become a part of your daily routine. In order to protect yourself from the wind and animals that might be drawn to the warmth or the smell of food, you check the door to make sure it is locked. On the majority of evenings, you have found yourself hearing the howling of wolves in the distance, their sounds moving through the darkness like frigid water. After placing your boots in close proximity to the flames, you do a second inspection of them. You make preparations for the next day by arranging your garments in the expectation that they will be slightly warmer when you put them on, because they are in close proximity to the heat. When you add another log to the fire, you do it with the knowledge that this one will most likely be the last one you add until morning. Through the process of making mistakes, you have discovered how to build a fire that will burn slowly and low throughout the darkness of the night. This method, which is referred to as banking the coals, entails covering the coals with ash in order to keep them alive while simultaneously slowing down their consumption over time. This is an initiative of creative nature. There will be times when you will hit the nail on the head and awaken to embers that you will be able to reignite. In the event that you make a mistake, you can find yourself waking up to icy ashes and the significantly more challenging process of beginning over. Sleep is the only thing that can be done at this point in time. As you go closer to your bed, you can already feel the chill that will come with the temperature. It is because the blankets had been exposed to the temperature of the cabin throughout the entire day that they are currently frigid. They are chilly enough, but not so frigid that they are frozen solid. That gliding between them causes your body to be shocked. The practice of heating stones in the fire, wrapping them in fabric, and placing them in the bed is something that some immigrants have learned to do in order to warm the bed before they lie down. That is what you attempted to do. It takes around 60 minutes for the stones to function. In such case, they are nothing more than chilly rocks that are quite heavy and take up space beneath your covers. However, there are instances when the initial hour of warmth is absolutely worth the embarrassment that follows, so you go ahead and do it anyhow. You don't take off your clothes before going to bed. Taking off your clothes in this bone-chilling weather is an absurd idea. Your wool shirt, long underwear, and warm socks are the items that you wear while you sleep. There are moments when you might even wear your pants. On the nights that were the coldest, you have slept with your coat draped over you as an additional blanket and your hat pulled down over your ears. There are luxurious products for folks who have extra heat, such as comfort and modesty. If you lie down on the mattress, the frigid temperature of the mattress will immediately penetrate your clothing. When you have finished pulling the blankets up and stacking them, you then follow the example set by everyone else. A tucking in is done by you. At this point, your legs are drawn up to your chest. You position your hands so that they are either behind your arms or between your thighs. In an effort to conserve heat, you make an effort to reduce the size of your body. During the time that your breath is frozen in the air above your face, you raise the blankets so that only your eyes and nose are visible. If you remain in this position for the following 8 to 10 hours, you will effectively remain there. The sounds that are heard at night are distinctive on the winter frontier. The wind never stops blowing, and the deep groan that rises and falls but never quite stops altogether. In tones ranging from a delicate whisper to a piercing shriek, it whistles through every crevice in your walls and every vulnerability in your architecture. Despite the fact that you have heard the noises of the cabin 100 times, you are nevertheless taken aback by the chilly, harsh cracks and groans that are produced by the wood contracting. There are times when snow gently glides off the roof, giving the sense that the entire building is falling apart or collapsing. The sounds of animals are another factor to consider. The wolves are correct, but the coyotes are also much closer than you would like them to be. At regular intervals, the cry of a mountain lion in the distance. Although infrequent, it is distinct. There are mice scurrying around your walls, looking for the same warmth that you are looking for. At this point, the mice have made peace with you. To put it another way, they are basically trying to stay alive. The process of falling asleep is laborious. In spite of the fact that your body is exhausted from the never-ending effort of frontier existence, your mind is fighting against it. Every night throughout the winter season is accompanied with a nagging feeling of nervousness and vulnerability. Should the temperature drop still further, there is a possibility that the fire will be extinguished. If there is a storm that comes in, you might be forced to stay inside for several days. You have to discipline yourself to take a break by breathing through these thoughts in a slow and steady manner, exactly like the wolves that are outside. Occasionally, you will be sharing this space. When you are a family, it is possible that your children are sleeping in the same room, hiding in corners, or sharing pallets on the floor among themselves. As a result of their combined body heat, married couples who sleep together have a great resource at their disposal. Laborers congregate in the bunk rooms of mining camps and livestock towns during the winter months. These bunk rooms are characterized by narrow bunks that are stacked 2 or 3 high. Men sleep shoulder to shoulder on these bunks because there is no privacy. During the night, the sounds of other people breathing, coughing, and shifting produce a lullaby that is different from any other. A reminder that you are not alone in the dark, even though you are strange and human. The situation is even more dire for individuals who travel alone. While the cowboy was sleeping down on the open prairie, his bedroll was placed on the icy ground and his horse was tied close by. He then lies down completely dressed, covering himself with his blanket and slicker and using his saddle as a pillow. This occurs after he has made a small fire and cooked his beans. As a result of the unusually cold ground underneath him, he has the sensation that his body is losing heat. He will have fits of sleep, and he will wake up approximately once per hour to keep an eye on the fire, listen for any potential threats, or simply to make sure that he is still alive. The person who sleeps on the frontier receives information about certain things that individuals who live in more secure and warmer regions never have to learn. When compared to genuine rest, sleep is more akin to a brief capitulation. You are able to fulfill the requirements of your body, yet you never really let go. Maintaining a partial awareness and attentiveness is something you do regularly. You never entirely silence the part of you that is always on the lookout for potential threats. To add insult to injury, there are actual dangers. Should you fail to exercise caution while you are sleeping, you run the risk of sustaining frostbite on your nose, fingers, or toes. In the early morning hours, carbon monoxide from a fire that is not well vented has the potential to kill a whole cabin. Even if hypothermia is going to kill you, it will still cause you to feel sleepy. In addition, when the temperature drops to a level that is sufficiently low, the line that separates sleep and death becomes so thin that it is frightening. You have probably heard stories about visitors who accidentally discovered frozen solid in the spring as they were tucked under their covers and appeared to be sleeping soundly. Because of this, you are able to keep an eye on yourself even while you are only partially conscious. Is there a numbness in your feet? Will you still be able to feel your hands? Do you find yourself perplexed by the cold and finding yourself compelled to remove your covers and clothing? It's not a good sign. To put that into practice, you will need to get up and move around in order to take action. There are longer nights during the winter. Because of the early setting of the sun and the late rising of the sun, there are 15 or 16 hours of darkness. One cannot remain awake for all of it. Candles and lamp oil are too valuable to be burned for the sake of providing illumination. To add insult to injury, there is nothing else to do but sleep inside the dark. On occasion, you modify your sleeping pattern. Once you have finished tending to the fire, get up and have a little nap, and then go back to sleep. However, despite the fact that it is disorganized and unsatisfactory, it is adequate. It is what gets you through. There are some nights that are preferable than others. In the event that a genuine snowstorm hits, The cabin will shake, the wind will howl, and the snow will accumulate against your door to the point where you will be unable to open it. Those are the evenings that you simply have to put up with. It is your goal to ensure that the fire continues to burn. While you wait, you remain hidden beneath your garments. It is not necessary to take any additional action. To put it in a manner that is almost abstract, the outside world has become hostile. This is not a malicious act. There is no concern on its part. Furthermore, you might pass away from that apathy just as easily as you breathe. Nevertheless, here is the peculiar thing. You are able to obtain some rest. In spite of everything, including the cold, the misery, and the fear, your body finally gives up and gives up forever. The effects of exhaustion are significant. There are 1,000 minor skirmishes that make up a winter day on the frontier, and your body needs relaxation after spending the entire day in the snow, cutting through frozen wood, fighting frozen water and equipment, and engaging in all of these activities. With all of your shortcomings, you give it. In addition, there is a limited period of time during which the pain will lessen if you are able to go asleep anywhere during those frigid hours before dawn. The warmth of your body, which is confined between layers of hide and wool, achieves a kind of equilibrium with the severity of the elements. To the extent that the sounds of the nighttime create a background that is almost soothing. The process by which you fall asleep in a manner that is comparable to that of true sleep. The majority of the time when you dream, you are thinking of the warmth of summer and the homes you left behind, which had real windows, walls, and stoves that heated every room. On occasion, you find yourself daydreaming about meals that you haven't consumed in a period of months. Dreams have the ability to periodically bring back memories of people, voices, and faces that you have almost completely forgotten about. You then awaken, and it is always far too soon. It is either completely out, or the fire is quite low. Since you went to sleep, the temperature inside the cabin has dropped by a significant amount. Aching in your body is caused by a number of factors, including the insufficient support provided by your homemade mattress, the overall accumulation of cold in your muscles and joints, and only lying in one position. You, on the other hand, are still living. You have made it through yet another night. A push is made to the rear of the stiff blankets. The chilly air makes it difficult for you to breathe, so you sit up straight. In spite of the fact that you are in close proximity to the fireplace, you reach for your boots, which are icy and rigid. Moreover, you begin over. This is the usual pattern of sleep throughout the winter months on the frontier. Although it is not comfortable or restful, it is sufficient. Just enough to keep you going. More than enough to wait till the next day. The ability to sleep in the cold was a skill that was learned by pioneers, cowboys, miners, and farmers alike. Their only option was to acquire knowledge. The only thing that mattered was survival, and sleep was how one had survived. And as a consequence, they had a restless, uneasy, and anxious night's sleep. On the other hand, they slept through night after night and winter after winter until spring arrived, which was a relief, and the world once again recalled its warmth. Now that the fire in our made-up cabin has been extinguished, let us shift our attention away from the collective anguish and instead concentrate on a single individual. This individual is a guy who became famous not because of the cold, but rather because of the way he endured through it. His name was Hugh Glass, and his story is entwined with severe winter nights that defy belief. His story is told in the first person. The evidence from the past, on the other hand, supports everything. Just for a moment, picture a man sleeping by himself in the midst of stars that, due to the great cold, give the impression of crackling in the night. Imagine that he was crawling across hundreds of miles of icy wilderness while covered in the skin of the very beast that had attempted to murder him. His wounds were so severe that they should have killed him. Imagine him closing his eyes each night, not knowing whether or not morning would come, but nevertheless waking up over and over again, driven by something that was more resolute than hope. To put it another way, this is hardly a heroic story in the traditional sense. It is not as silent as that says it is. It is about the body's determination to sleep even when it appears to be giving up. And it is also about the phenomenon of slumber being taken away under circumstances that are incomprehensible. Hugh Glass was born in Pennsylvania somewhere around the year 1783, despite the fact that the circumstances of his early life are hidden by the vagueness that surrounds many personalities associated with the frontier. We do know that he lives a life of movement and danger long before the event that brought him fame. This is something that we are aware of. During the period that he was at sea, it is possible that he was being compelled to serve on a pirate ship. In the same way as it is frequently the case with people who lived on the boundaries of civilization, the records are unclear. After that, he was taken captive by pornographic individuals and spent a period of years living among them, learning their traditions, language, and methods of survival in conditions that consistently killed men who were not adequately equipped. In the year 1823, after seeking job as a fur trapper and guide, Glass became a member of the expedition led by Major Andrew Henry that traveled up the Missouri River into what is now the states of South Dakota and Montana. At that point in time, he was approximately 40 years old, and according to the norms of the frontier, he was almost an elderly man. The majority of those who engaged in trapping were young men who were in dire need of financial support. Glass, on the other hand, possessed experience, which the young men did not possess. His abilities included being able to read the weather, finding water, sleeping lightly, and waking up fast in the event of an adverse situation. During this time period, fur trapping were controlled actions of desperation that were carried out by individuals in the pursuit of the beaver pelts that wealthy Europeans coveted for their hats. Parties of men would travel extensively into undiscovered terrain in order to accomplish their goal. As a means of subsistence, they relied on hunting and foraging, traveled light, and carried very few possessions with them. As soon as winter approached, they would construct crude camps out of wood and hides, and they would spend the coldest months of the year crouched over fires that never truly managed to keep the cold at bay. Glass was well versed in the existence of this concept. The winters that he had spent were spent in makeshift shelters that hardly qualified as shelters at all. These shelters included lean-tos made of twigs and buffalo hide, as well as hollow areas under fallen trees where a man could press himself up against the trunk and cover the opening with snow in order to keep the little heat that his body produced. In the past, he has slept next to campfires that he was required to take care of throughout the night. He would get up every hour or two to add more wood to the fires, because if he did not, he might not wake up at all. During the course of these travels, he devised sleeping arrangements that were exceedingly practical. Assuming he was fortunate, he would find a buffalo robe laying on the ground. In the event that he had been able to carry something with him or trade it for something else, it may be a blanket made of wool or hide. In order to protect himself from the possibility of encountering hostile bands, wolves, and bears at any time during the night, he kept his weapon close at reach. On occasion, he would dig a small hole in the earth for his body, which would provide him with a few inches of protection from the wind. There were times when he would sleep against his horse in order to maintain his body temperature. Without a doubt, the heat that emanates from the animal's body is more reliable than any fire. Every single one of the men who were with him slept in the same manner. In spite of the fact that each individual would be responsible for his own survival, he would find comfort in the company of others as they arranged their bedrolls in a rough circle near to the fire, with their feet pointing in the direction of the flames. The sounds that make men sleep in the woods are distinctive. It is true that there is snoring, but there is also the constant shifting, the odd awakening to take a look at the surroundings, and the whispered conversations that take place between those who are unable to get enough sleep. On the frontier, sleep was never a private experience and was never fully peaceful. During the month of August in the year 1823, Glass was spying ahead of his troop in the region that is now South Dakota, near to the forks of the Grand River. Despite the fact that winter has not yet arrived, many regions are susceptible to experiencing cold at any time. During the process of traversing through dense foliage close to a creek, Glass came into contact with a grizzly bear and its pups, which is the worst conceivable combination. The bear's attack displays a level of aggression that can only be matched by a mother who is protecting her cubs. From Glass's own subsequent recollections, those who eventually discovered him have put together what took place in the past. He suffered severe injuries as a result of the bear's vicious mauling. His ribs were broken. One of his legs was severed. His scalp was destroyed, and his throat was exposed. It was expected that he would pass away within a few minutes due to the severe wounds he sustained. As soon as his buddies came, they drove the bear away and then looked at what they believed to be a deceased individual. It was requested by Major Henry, the head of the expedition, that volunteers be with Glass until he passed away and then bury him in the appropriate manner. Both John Fitzgerald and Jim Bridger, who would later go on to become famous in his own right, were in agreement. Bridger was a teenager at the time. According to the terms of the agreement, they would receive a higher salary for carrying out this tedious duty. Those that were left behind in the group moved on. Over the course of time, Bridger and Fitzgerald waited. 2 days on, 1 day off. Glass managed to maintain its life with a tenacity that must have impressed those who witnessed it. On the other hand, the location was dangerous. There exists a significant possibility that warriors from Arikara may launch an assault. At some point, the two gentlemen were able to reach a consensus. Following the theft of his weapon, knife, and various other essential stuff, they got out of Glass, neither dead nor buried, but simply absent. When Glass ultimately regained enough consciousness to grasp his plight, he was alone in the bush, unarmed, unable to walk, with wounds that bled and sobbed and were certain to become infected. It was getting chilly, and he was unable to move. After this point, his story begins to take the form of a story about sleep. Since he was unable to walk, glass crawled through the room. One of the closest forts, Fort Carr, was located more than 200 meters away. After that, he began to drag himself along the Cheyenne River in the direction of the south. His growth was first measured in yards each day when he was first evaluated. Despite the fact that the pain must have been excruciating, it eventually becomes a normal part of life when it lasts for a sufficient amount of time. He was required to sleep each and every night. Please give this some serious consideration. Imagine that your body is being destroyed along with each movement, that your flesh is being torn apart, and that your bones are grinding against each other. Imagine now that you are looking for a place to stay the night, being conscious of the fact that you do not possess a weapon, a fire, or a shelter. Having the knowledge that wolves are attracted to the smell of blood and that your blood is everywhere on your clothing, in your wounds, and leaving a trail across the plain is a very important thing to keep in mind. Glass would drag himself to every available refuge he could find. There were times when it was a collection of shrubs. On occasion, there would be a dip in the ground where he would be slightly less obvious, and on other occasions, there would be nothing at all. It would simply be his point when exhaustion took over and he simply stopped moving. He did not have a blanket with him. Regardless of what he had been wearing when he was left behind, it was now shredded and extremely dirty. In times of extreme desperation, people will act in this manner. What he had was put to good use by him. In the aftermath of the attack, he came across the dead body of the grizzly bear that had mauled him. After the animal had been butchered by his buddies, he removed a portion of its hide. The thick fur, which also acted as his blanket and shelter, was his primary protection mechanism against the environmental elements. Glass would lie in the dark at night, covered in the pelt of the bear that had nearly taken his life, and he would eventually enter a state that was a combination of sleep and unconsciousness. Although rest was necessary for the restoration of his body, it was nearly impossible for him to get any. The cold was one of the problems. The anguish was another concern. However, the susceptibility was even more severe than both of them. He was weak and unable to run. There was no way he could fight. Amidst the darkness, the only thing he could do was lie there and hope that no one discovered him. Taking into consideration the psychological repercussions of this is an essential step. Every night, he might pass away. Every time, it's possible that he's closing his eyes for the very final time. In spite of this, he was required to close them. His body was working tirelessly to recover, and because recovery requires rest, the body seeks sleep even, or especially in the extremities. His body was striving to recuperate as quickly as possible. On some evenings, coyotes would circle him in a circle. It was possible for him to hear their screams and yips, as well as the sound of their feet striking the ground while he was in the shadows. He would lie motionless while wrapped in his bear hide, waiting for them to decide that he was either too alive or too dangerous to be worth the risk. Both of these possibilities were possible. Most of the time, they moved on. They periodically got close enough for him to smell them, a wild, musky smell that blended with the odor of his own sick wounds. He could smell them. While he was traveling, the temperature plummeted, especially during the nighttime hours. His improvised covering would be covered in frost by the time dawn arrived, and he would wake up shivering till his teeth began to rub against each other. It is this that is important. Although everything was going on, he continued to wake up. This was plenty for him to survive, regardless of what he was able to find or capture. The only thing he used was his bare hands to dig roots and wild berries out of the ground. At one point, he witnessed wolves slaughtering a buffalo calf, and he dragged himself to the carcass in order to consume what was left over after the wolves had had their fill. Because of this, supplies and food were made available. With the intention of enhancing his insulation as he slept, he sliced additional buffalo hide and put it over the skin that was exposed. As the weeks passed, his wounds began to heal in a steady and unbelievable manner. He became more proficient at his crawling, and he was able to cover more ground each day. Yet, the nights remained to be difficult for him. There was a consistent decrease in temperature as fall progressed. As winter arrived, he had very little equipment, inadequate shelter, and a body that was still mending from injuries that should have caused him to die sooner rather than later. He followed the Cheyenne River, drinking from it, and occasionally using his bare hands to catch fish. He was a river runner. The icy water, which was provided by snowmelt from the mountains, not only caused him to feel cold on the inside, but it also ensured that he would not die of thirst, which was a significant achievement. When he had the courage, he would spend the night sleeping by the lake, taking pleasure in the sound of the water passing by in the darkness. It is difficult to adequately express the feeling of loneliness that one has when sleeping alone in a vast desert for people who have never done it. There is a lack of genuine tranquility. It is devoid of human presence in a manner that makes you feel as though you have been erased, despite the fact that there are constant sounds, including those of animals, wind, and water. Glass would lie down deep within his skins and look up at the stars, which were so brilliant and numerous that they appeared to be surreal. And in the midst of all that void, he was the only human being who possessed the capacity to detect them at that particular instant and location. A number of historians assert that, in order to maintain his sanity throughout this time period, he engaged in conversations with himself. Glass was not known to have a strong religious bent, although there are those who believe he did pray. More likely, he barely made it through. They are remarkably robust when the alternative is death. Humans are remarkable. After he had recovered his strength, Glass was able to kindle little fires. Because of this, everything was different. Yes, fire provided warmth, but it also provided protection. Animals stay away from fire. It is impossible to overestimate the psychological comfort of light in the dark. The tools that he had created or acquired along the way, such as steel and flint, he would use to gather whatever dry wood he could find and start little fires that he would tend to during the night. He would do this several times throughout the voyage. The presence of fire makes it easier to get to sleep. To put it another way, it is not straightforward. In addition, he began to encounter other travelers as well as friendly locals who were willing to supply him with food and other important supplies. One of the French commercial groups extended an invitation to him to take a trip down the river on their keelboat. It began as a frantic crawl for him, but it eventually turned into a determined walk. The nights, on the other hand, continued to be very frigid, and falling asleep remained more of a conscious effort than a natural thing. When Glass finally arrived in Fort Kaya in the beginning of October, he had been on the road for a total of 21 days. The residents of the fort were taken aback when they saw him for the first time. They were aware that the trapper had been abandoned by his companions, and now he was entering their compound, barely moving at all. They had heard this particular information. His injuries had healed into scars of wrath by this point. Even while he was still alive, his body was severely emaciated. During that particular night, he slept in a real bed, in a real room, with a roof and walls, with a real fireplace, and with real blankets around his head. According to reports, he slept for around 24 hours in a row. Last but not least, after all those chilly nights spent by himself, his body was finally given the opportunity to rest entirely and let go of the awareness that had been keeping him alive. All things considered, Glass's story did not end there. Simply surviving was not enough for him to be content. The guys who had abandoned him were the ones he wished to confront. As a result of his recuperation in Fort Kiowa, he was able to consume regular meals, sleep in a secure and warm environment, and recover in ways that were not conceivable while he was sneaking through the wilderness. This time, he began his journey once more in the spring. Going to Fort Henry and then Fort Atkinson, he pursued Fitzgerald and Bridger in order to catch up with them. In the moment when he found Bridger, he made the decision to show mercy. Since the youth, who had been young and possibly pushed by the older Fitzgerald, never located Fitzgerald to carry out the revenge he had envisioned, Glass eventually let it go. This was due to the fact that Fitzgerald had never discovered the boy. He went back to his usual routine of guiding, surviving, and trapping, and continued his existence. In the subsequent 10 years, Glass continued to work on the frontier. He also managed to survive several near misses, harsh winters, and nights spent sleeping on the streets under adverse circumstances. He triumphed over all of these challenges. In the year 1833, he and two of his friends were murdered by Arikara warriors who assaulted them in the vicinity of the Yellowstone River. In his 50s, he was a man. He was 20 years older than other men who led lives that were comparable to his own. In spite of this, it was the challenging crawl that he endured during the winter of 1823 that brought him fame. Because of his calm perseverance night after night, choosing to rest when he had every reason to give up, rather than because of the brutality he suffered, he was able to overcome the challenges he faced. Even though he was feeling broken and alone, he closed his eyes and wrapped himself in bear hide while lying beneath the stars. However, he woke up to drag himself a little further. Sleep did not provide Hugh Glass with any sense of solace. The peace was not present. It was impossible for the body to give up. Additionally, there is something that is almost endearing about that rejection, something that encapsulates the spirit of the experience of living on the frontier, the determination to find a place to sleep, get up, and continue living regardless of what the night may do. In our warm beds, where it was protected from the elements and from any predators, it is nearly impossible to understand what Glass went through. However, we might be able to bring the image of a man who slept under conditions that should have killed him and woke up with us tonight as we drift toward our own rest. this would be a really interesting thing to think about. Who sought comfort in his restlessness, who persisted through night after night, until at long last, those nights turned into days, which grew into years, and whose story developed into a legend. Those who crossed the frontier were required to fulfill a great deal of requirements. The demand that the body needed sleep, despite the fact that it was in danger, experiencing trauma, and the temperature was bone-chilling, was perhaps the most harsh of all the demands. Even still, I required those times of solitude and vulnerability. Additionally, in spite of everything that was going on, people like Hugh Glass were able to give their bodies the rest that they required. Despite being short, broken, and insufficient, it is adequate, almost never sufficient in any case. As we continue to drift deeper into the chilly night, let us move away from the things that are familiar to us and toward the lines that define astonishment. When European settlers arrived on the frontier, they were confronted with lifestyles that were beyond their comprehension. Additionally, the act of sleeping itself became intertwined with practices, dreams, and folklore that blurred the boundaries between the spiritual and the physical. Therefore, the frontier was a place where old customs and practical survival collided. Regarding the topic of winter sleep in the Wild West, there are still questions that have not been answered. Artifacts found in abandoned homesteads, remnants of diaries, and stories that have been passed down from generation to generation are all examples. All of these things hint to a culture of sleep that was significantly more nuanced and peculiar than what sleep culture could imply, based on cold blankets and exhaustion. With the help of one another, let us progressively investigate these mysteries. Just as one may take a stroll through a wintry landscape, where the familiar suddenly takes on a strange image when illuminated by the moonlight. The teepee is a marvel of engineering that is immersed in the process of spiritual practice. The Plains tribes, like the Lot, Cheyenne, and Arapjo, had been able to endure the cold in this region for thousands of years prior to the arrival of European settlers. They were in possession of information that the immigrants were in desperate need of, but frequently would not be able to obtain. A significant portion of the information was centered on the tipi, which is a structure that was so ingeniously designed for winter survival that it continues to be somewhat mysterious even today. Tents are not the only thing that a well-constructed teepee is. It is a scene that has been precisely built, and it manipulates temperature, wind, and fire in ways that, until you know the physics, have the appearance of being absolutely amazing. The conical shape is beneficial because it effectively sheds wind and snow, so reducing accumulation that could lead to the collapse of the building. The top's movable smoke flaps result in the production of a Venturi effect, which is characterized by the movement of smoke upward and outward, while simultaneously drawing in fresh air from below. The liner, which is a second layer of hide that is suspended inside and produces an insulating air pocket, is responsible for directing cold gusts downward and outward beneath the margins of the garment. In reality, the structure was the product of the collective knowledge of several generations. During specific times of the year, the poles were harvested from specific trees that had been treated in order to make them both robust and flexible. The methods that were utilized to tan the hides resulted in the hides being resistant to the elements and breathable. In a little under an hour, a family that is capable of doing so could either assemble or disassemble the complete structure. If it is constructed properly, however, it may be able to withstand gusts that are powerful, enough to crush a settler's hut. However, this is when things start to become mysterious. During the winter nights, when temperatures frequently dropped below freezing, Native Americans used these teepees as places to sleep. It was also said that they had a higher quality of sleep than the settlers did in their log homes. How is it? Archaeological research conducted on ancient tipi sites has yielded some answers to long-standing questions. The sleeping parts were positioned perfectly along the back curve, which is where the liner generated the warmest pocket. This was in contrast to the arrangement of the sleeping sections right beneath the smoking hole, which would have allowed cold air to fall. There would be high platforms made of willow twigs clothed in buffalo robes, and families would be hoisted off the freezing ground and placed on these platforms to sleep. The core fire, which was meticulously maintained throughout the night, generated an extremely uniform distribution of heat, which was further improved by the conical shape of the fire in question. The textiles used for sleeping were layered in accordance with notions that modern designers of sleeping bags would be familiar with. Insulation was provided by buffalo robes, which drained away moisture and trapped air inside with them. In order to prevent the potentially fatal cold that would have been caused by coming into close contact with frozen earth, it was necessary to allow air to circulate beneath the willow platforms. At least 4 or 5 layers of hides and furs were layered in a particular manner, according to some accounts, in order to reduce the amount of weight and increase the amount of warmth. However, it is not limited to engineering alone. In the anthropological record, sleeping traditions are described, including singing songs before going to bed and carefully aligning beds with the cardinal directions. It's possible that these were superstitions, but they were not superstitions. Rather, they contained true survival information. Sleeping with your head facing west, away from the winds that are the coldest, was not the only habit that was followed. It served a purpose. The evening regimen that was actually followed was well arranged. As the sun went down, the stones would be heated, and the fire would continue to spread. These stones would be placed all about the resting area, and they would help to maintain a comfortable temperature during the night. Initially, children would be bundled up and placed in the regions that were the warmest. It was decided that adults would position themselves around the perimeter of the area in order to create an additional windbreak for the elderly and children. Then there are the actions that occur throughout dreams. Many societies that lived in the plains attached a great deal of spiritual value to winter dreams. Over the course of the long nights, it was believed that the space that separated the realms of the spirit and the corporeal grew less. People would fast, pray, and sleep with sacred things, medicine bundles, certain stones, or feathers under or close to their heads in order to prepare themselves for significant dreams. This was done in order to prepare for life-changing dreams. Sometimes, young men would leave the main camp and sleep alone in smaller structures, or even on the plains, in the hopes of seeing visions that would change their lives. It was believed that the hardness of the environment would peel back the surface and reveal more underlying realities during the winter months, which was when this custom was especially widespread. It is this question that researchers are struggling to find an answer to. What was the nature of these dream meetings, and were they simply spiritual? Another possibility is that the physical conditions of winter sleep also played a role in their behavior. The low oxygen levels in sealed winter tipis, the mild hypoxia that would result from sleeping at altitude in mountain winter camps, the smoke that would result from fires burning all night, and the nutritional deficiencies that would develop as winter supplies ran low were all factors that contributed to the situation. All of these things have the potential to cause hallucinations of a moderate intensity, vivid dreams, and altered states of consciousness. The winter dreams of indigenous people are described as being unusually vivid in the notebooks and diaries kept by missionaries and traders. Through their dreams, they were able to receive prophecies, travel great places, and have conversations with animals. Europeans usually dismissed these as outmoded beliefs and dismissed them as not being relevant. However, when modern experts studying sleep read these same stories, they find descriptions that are similar to hypnagogic hallucinations, lucid dreaming, and sleep paralysis described in the reports. What would have happened if the winter sleep culture of the Plains tribes had developed over the course of many generations as a means of coping with the altered awareness that the harsh winter climate inherently created? Is it possible that the rituals that they engaged in during their dreams were a cunning response to the environmental conditions that the European settlers were forced to endure? Dreams were more than just personal contact with other people. They were information that was shared. When a powerful dream was shared with the tribe, the elders would interpret it and sometimes even take action based on what they saw. The timing of the ceremonies was determined by the dreams that directed the hunting strategies and warned of potential dangers. As a consequence of this, sleep went from being merely a means of relaxation to becoming a tool of acquiring tribal intelligence and having access to information that was unavailable to awake consciousness. It is impossible for us to know for certain there was a significant amount of the oral information that had been handed down from generation to generation that was lost as a result of the violence and upheaval that was produced by colonialism. The mystery, on the other hand, is preserved in the archaeological record, the traditions that have been passed down, and the peculiarity that native peoples appeared to sleep better during the winter months, leaving newcomers exhausted and half-mad as a result of insufficient sleep. All of the unusual adjustments that the settlers made. Now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about the settlers themselves and the peculiar practices that emerged as they sought to survive winters for which they were fully prepared. An artifact that has been found repeatedly among the ruins of sod houses in the states of Nebraska, Kansas, and the Dakotas has been uncovered by archaeologists. Smooth river stones are typically found in groups of 4 to 6, and they are positioned in close proximity to the areas of places where beds once existed. These stones have a discolored appearance, cracking that is caused by thermal stress, and signs that they have been consistently heated. According to their diaries, it was common practice to first heat stones in the fire and then insert them in mattresses after they had been heated. Nevertheless, the mystery resides in the specifics of the situation. It has been revealed that there are certain stones that should not have been there that are wrapped in bits of fabric. Silk and fine cotton were rare and precious goods while they were being traded across the border. Just why would you want to cover a heating stone with your finest fabric. According to the findings of a few research, it was related to the preservation of heat. To achieve a higher level of insulation, the weave should be finer. There are many who believe that it was the use of magical thinking that introduced something beautiful and associated with happier times into the hard reality of falling asleep during the winter. Those stones that are coiled have a character that is extremely moving. Imagine a woman, her hands rough from working on the frontier, delicately tying a silk scarf she got from Boston or Philadelphia around a heated rock. She is doing this with great care. It is that the scarf is the last lovely item she possesses, the last remembrance of a life that was more compassionate. On the other hand, by employing it for this practical purpose, she transforms a luxury object into a functional tool for survival. It is possible, however, that it is more than just useful. It's possible that the sensation of silk against her feet at night, even if it's wrapped around a stone, helps her remember that she used to own silk and that she lived in a society where things like that were significant. Even more peculiar are the stones that have been found to have scuffed symbols on them. These symbols include crude crosses, circles, and even what appear to be initials on occasion. In the regions where people shared sleeping quarters, were these ownership marks present? In reality, were prayers etched on the implements that were used for survival? We do not know for sure. However, the individuals who left these marks did not leave any written explanations behind, and the stories are frequently unknown to the descendants of those individuals. Several members of the family are said to have passed these marked stones down to one another, according to one theory. Each and every stone is associated with a certain individual. During the darkness of a sod home, where you were unable to see what you were holding, the scratches would make it possible for you to recognize your stone via the use of your feeling. What is the reason for the presence of religious symbols? What are the reasons behind the occurrence of complicated patterns? There is a ritualistic quality to these engravings, which suggests that their value extends beyond mere identification. In addition, entries in notebooks and letters that were sent back to the East contain accounts of settlers who buried themselves in straw in order to keep warm. Not only do they use straw beds, but they also dig into heaps of straw, like animals who are hibernating during summer. In areas where settlers arrived too late to construct shelters in a suitable manner before winter arrived, or in areas where early storms destroyed the inadequate structures that they had managed to construct. This technique is the most widespread. On the basis of a diary written by a woman from Kansas in the year 1869, it is stated that her family spent 2 weeks living in a massive pile of prairie hay that they had collected, just like mice do. The only thing that allowed them to breathe was a little opening for air. She talks of how they had strange dreams, how time seemed to become confused, and how they used to wake up not knowing what time it was or whether it was day or night. The fact that she describes her children laughing in the dark and considers it as an adventure is despite the fact that she is afraid that they would burn or suffocate. In addition, the posts that she wrote throughout those 2 weeks have a bizarre quality to them. She discusses discussions that she is skeptical actually took place, but she does talk about them. She provides a description of hearing music that was not attainable. At one point, she is certain that a few days have passed, but her husband tells her that it has only been a day. She is confused by this information. It would appear that the sensory deprivation that occurred as a result of being buried in straw, the poor air quality, and the constant low-level terror all contributed to the altered state of consciousness that was experienced. They were able to escape undead. However, we do not have access to the diaries of many families who were in similar situations. However, many families did not. Adaptation versus desperation is the question that's being asked here. What is the point at which a survival strategy evolves into a new way of life that begins on the frontier itself and is neither European nor indigenous? The newcomers were not given the advice to bury themselves in straw by the farming traditions that originated in Europe. They were becoming different from who they had been before, trying everything and experimenting with other things. Death is a nighttime sleeper. There are a lot of letters and diaries related to the frontier that contain a term that makes reference to winter on a regular basis. Death is a nighttime sleeper. The term is used by the author without any context being provided, giving the impression that the author is presuming the reader would comprehend it. However, we do not, at least not completely. It would appear that these evenings were exceptionally cold, which made it difficult to get a good night's sleep. Nights in which the temperature dropped to the point where it was likely that you might not wake up. For the sake of keeping an eye on one another, ensuring that everyone was breathing, and searching for signs of hypothermia or frostbite, families would alternately stay up late on these nights, as stated in several of the notes. The preparations for a night of death slumber were very detailed. Rags, cloth, and pieces of newspaper, if they were available, would be stuffed into every nook and cranny of the cottage. To the extent that it is safely possible, the height of the flames would be increased. When the family went to sleep, they would be wrapped in all of the blankets, quilts, and additional clothes that were available in the house. Other postings give the impression that something strange was going on. Yet on occasion, multiple families would jam themselves into a single cabin, pooling their resources and sharing their body heat. They describe a sense of depth, a heaviness, and a sensation that persons who slept on these nights were moving to a faraway location all at the same time. In the month of January in the year 1875, a homesteader from Montana writes about his wife on the night just before she passes away. If I want to rouse her up from her deep sleep, I have to give her a forceful shaking. Slowly, she takes a breath. As soon as she comes to, she begins to reminisce about her childhood experiences of taking leisurely strolls across the summer fields of Ohio. Despite her confusion, she is under the impression that she is 8 years old once more. For her to regain her sense of self, she requires some time. Despite the fact that this sounds like hypothermia, it also sounds like perhaps something else. It is possible for individuals who should not be able to hibernate to reach a state that is nearly equivalent to hibernation if they are exposed to extreme cold, because it allows their metabolism to slow down. Extreme strain was placed on the body, which resulted in the development of unusual adaptations. It has been reported that individuals who have had death sleep nights wake up with no remembrance of the night at all, as if those hours had been completely erased from their consciousness upon their awakening. Other people claim to have had dreams that were so vivid that they seemed to be more real than the actual world. Some people assert that they have lived through years of imagined experiences while their bodies were frozen beneath blankets, and that they have experienced a whole lifetime in a single night without moving. The medical journals of pioneering physicians frequently contain accounts of patients who appeared to have died from the cold, but were brought back to life after being warmed for a number of hours during the course of the treatment. During the border winters, it became extremely impossible to differentiate between slumber and anything that was more intense. Death, sleep nights, was the catchphrase that was used to describe the cultural reaction. The act of acknowledging the risk while simultaneously normalizing it to the point where it becomes only another facet of adapting to the cold. When the term appears in letters that have been sent back to the East, recipients who were not aware of the background of the frontier location frequently feel suspicious. One woman wrote to her sister in New York, "We had 3 death-sleep nights last week." Her sister's frantic response was, "Thank God you survived." The frontier woman obviously did not understand, and she responded with amusement that they had, of course, survived throughout the 3 death-sleep nights. Everyone was able to endure the sleepless nights that followed the death. Simply put, it was winter. It is clear that this disparity reveals something of great importance. On the frontier, people were beginning to build their own language and culture, and they were also beginning to normalize situations that would have been deemed strange in other locations. For the purpose of community sleeping, camps and bunkhouses are utilized. On top of that, there are the collective sleeping patterns that emerged in different locations, such as railroad construction sites, livestock villages, and mining camps. It was not typical for these communities to exist. These groups consisted of strangers, most of whom were men, who had nothing in common with one another other than the duty that they were assigned. On the other hand, winter pushed them to involve themselves in a level of intimacy that would have been unthinkable in other circumstances. Efficiency was the primary goal of bunk dwellings. Comfort was not a priority. Structures that are long and thin, with possibly 1 or 2 windows, a stove in the middle, and bunks that are erected 2 or 3 high along the walls. In the most severe winter, it was possible for 50 or more men to pack themselves into a space that was designed for 30 people. This was due to the fact that body heat was vital, and no one wanted to stay in the smaller, colder outlying buildings. The bunk hierarchy was difficult to understand and regularly caused contention. In spite of the fact that the top bunks were warmer, they were more difficult to access and even more dangerous in the event that you fell. While the bottom bunks were the coldest, they were also the easiest to access since they were located closest to the drafts that were coming from underneath the door. Although the most desirable bunks were located in the middle of the room, they also had the highest probability of being in close proximity to someone who snorted or had an objectionable stench. It was fresh males that were given the harshest spots. Your seniority was a factor in your promotion to a higher position. The travelers who have visited these locations have described them with a mixture of terror and wonder. It was impossible to ignore the odor: wool that was wet, tobacco smoke, people who were not clean, and a privy pail that was impossible to be emptied because the door was frozen together. Not a single sound was ever heard. Men who were unable to wind down and relax were snoring, coughing, and moving around in an agitated manner. When someone grabbed more than their fair share of room, there might be some disagreements regarding whether or not they were stealing blankets. The violence that occurred in bunk homes was not uncommon. Nonetheless, it was typically fleeting. For example, a punch was thrown, and a wrestling match ended quickly, since neither of the guys could afford to be gravely harmed during the winter that was still on the horizon. Additionally, there were unwritten guidelines. Although you may argue and complain, the fact remains that you did not inflict any harm on anyone, because the continuation of operations was essential to the existence of everyone else. All the same, there was a peculiar occurrence that took place in these regions. Eventually, a culture of sleepwatching emerged. The males would, without even realizing it, try to coordinate their sleeping patterns with those of their roommates. In the event that one of the men yelled out in a nightmare, the others would wake up and wait until he had calmed down before going back to sleep. Snoring is always a bad sign, and the men in the area would reach out and shake someone to get them to breathe more deeply if they stopped snoring. Apparently, there are instances in which males have agreed to sleep in shifts. Some stayed awake to tend to the fire while others went to sleep, and then they traded places. Nevertheless, the stories of this happening without any discussion or consensus are the ones that are the most compelling. In order to ensure its own existence, the group organizes itself without even being aware of it. A railroad worker in Wyoming wrote about waking up in the middle of the night and noting that men were awake and maintaining watch in a precise pattern. This was despite the fact that no one had discussed the matter before. It was as if we were one creature, he recorded in his writing. There was a creature that had a great number of eyes, some of which were open all the time. In spite of the fact that it is observed in a variety of high-stress survival circumstances, anthropologists refer to this phenomenon as communal vigilance, and it is particularly well documented in frontier winter camps. The question that has to be answered is how much of this was due to intentional coordination and how much was due to something that was more fundamental. A traditional sleeping pattern that was mostly lost when humans moved into different shelters is on the verge of being re-established by contemporary humans. For the most part, our distant ancestors did not sleep alone in their private bedrooms. They slept in groups around fireplaces because they were afraid of the predators that were hiding in the shadows outside. There was a way in which those conditions were recreated on the frontier. Furthermore, it is possible that a long-standing component of human sleep behavior has re-emerged. Through the use of these communal sleeping places, complex relationships were formed. The vulnerability of sleep brought together men of different social classes, races, and temperaments, guys who would never have connected with one another in a normal life, and they were deeply attached via the shared experience of sleep. You were aware of people who snorted, had nightmares, talked while they were sleeping, and cried in private when they thought no one could hear them. Over the course of the winter, several of these partnerships continued to exist. Men who shared a bunkhouse over a difficult winter would later seek each other out, trust one another in business, and defend one another in court. This would happen because they lived together. Relationships that went beyond the typical social limits were formed by the intimacy of winter slumber. The winter dreams themselves, as well as the occurrence of shared dreams, merit consideration. People have reported having incredibly vivid dreams during frontier winters, according to a number of sources, including diaries, letters, and even a few newspaper articles. People woke up perplexed about what they had imagined and what they had remembered because their dreams were so real. Shared dreams in which several residents of the same cabin or bunkhouse reported having similar dreams. In 1878, a Wyoming schoolteacher described how she and her 2 boarding students had a dream one night about a woman in white strolling across the snow. They were startled to discover that the specifics of their dreams matched when they compared them in the morning. The woman's direction of travel, the music she was humming, even her hair. The intelligent, well-educated teacher attempted to brush it off as a coincidence, but she was obviously shaken. She tried to explain what had happened for pages in her journal, offering and then rejecting many theories. Some explanations are provided by contemporary sleep science. Poorly ventilated flames can release carbon monoxide, which can cause shared, altered states and hallucinations. Malnutrition, which is prevalent in late winter, lowers serotonin levels, which affects how vivid dreams are. People become hyper-focused on one another as a result of social isolation and a lack of outside stimulation, perhaps resulting in shared vision and unconscious suggestion. Mechanisms are also suggested by the science of shared sleeping areas. People that are close to one another use movement and sound to affect each other's sleep stages. Nearby sleepers may be thrown into REM sleep if one person goes into it and starts to move or make noises. It's feasible that the content of their dreams will overlap if everyone is going into REM sleep at the same moment and they've spent the entire day together with little outside stimulation. However, it's also possible that these dreams had a purpose, that fantasies were a source of amusement, escape, and sanity during the long, gloomy, lonely winter months. Individuals would go into great detail about their dreams, building on each other's stories to create a shared fantasy world that helped them cope with the harsh realities of everyday life. Winter dream telling became a custom in certain frontier towns. People would relate their dreams over breakfast in the morning. The most vivid, bizarre, and consoling dreams would be recounted and expanded upon. These dreams would have developed into nearly mythical tales that united the society by the end of the winter. In particular, children eagerly anticipated dreamtime. New dreams were a source of new narrative in a world with little entertainment, expensive and rare literature, and a few stories that had been told repeatedly. Sometimes children would add details to their dreams in order to make them more engaging, and adults would comply, realizing that the dream's capacity to get them through another day was more important than its veracity. The frontier wasn't the only place like this. Dream sharing is a custom in many cultures, but it took on a unique form in the winter camps of the Wild West. The landscape's vastness, emptiness, and strangeness were reflected in the dreams. In their dreams, people encountered talking wolves, strolled through unending snow under unbelievable stars, and discovered summer concealed in ice-covered caverns. Even in the little surviving stories, there was a sense of longing in these shared fantasies. People dreamed of home, warmth, and plenty. However, they also dreamed of wonder, beauty, and the transformation of the natural world into something enchanted. In dreams, the harsh and lethal prairie transformed into a world of wonder and opportunity, Were these merely fantasies? Or were they a psychological adaptation, a means of enduring months of adversity on both a bodily and mental level? In order to counterbalance the unpleasant realities of hunger, terror, and cold, the mind creates mystery and beauty. Mysteries of archaeology. There are still mysteries at archaeological sites. A sleeping alcove that shouldn't have been there was discovered by researchers in the ruins of an 1870s Montana homestead. It's too intricately designed to be an afterthought, yet it's too little for an adult. Although it is arranged in a fashion that is inappropriate for a child's bed, the stones that line it exhibit signs of warmth, and burn marks indicate many little fires. It is too near, the ceiling resembling a shelf. The alcove is less than 3 feet broad and just 5 feet long. To fit, an adult would have to fold up almost like a fetus. However, river stones that have been meticulously mortared into place line its perimeter, a degree of construction work that seems out of proportion to the space. The burn mark indicates that someone frequently started tiny fires inside this cove, which seems quite risky considering the limited area and closeness to wooden timbers. According to the prevailing theory, the person who slept there was probably a lady based on objects discovered nearby. However, why? As the temperature rises, the higher position would have been warmer, but it would also have been riskier due to the increased exposure to smoke. What motivated someone to build this odd sleeping area is a mystery, as are priorities. One explanation is that someone experienced claustrophobia in reverse, finding solace in the cramped womb-like environment. Another is that someone needs to be kept warm but kept apart from the rest of the family due to illness or injury. Though this is just conjecture, there is a darker potential that it served as a hiding place or a haven to flee an abusive situation. Other sites have similar quirks. Tiny enclosed compartments constructed inside larger rooms, like boxes within boxes. Sleeping quarters are buried beneath cabins and only reachable by ladder. Were these odd architectural manifestations of psychological stress or reactions to particular circumstances? Archaeologists discovered what looked to be a sleeping pit at a site in North Dakota. It was a rectangular hole excavated into the floor of a sod hut, roughly 3 feet deep, and just big enough for one person to lie down. There were traces of a wooden cover that could be pulled over the top, and prairie grass surrounded the pit's walls. When covered with soil on all sides, the individual resting in this pit would have been below ground level in total darkness. Why would someone build and utilize a space like that? Extreme cold is the only plausible reason. Partially buried would have served as insulation, and the Earth's temperature is more consistent than that of air. However, the psychological ramifications are concerning. Deciding not to brave the cold above ground and instead to be buried alive every night. Sleep artifacts are discovered, but the experience is difficult to comprehend. The underground sleeping pits, the shared bunks, the elevated aloves, and the heated stones. They claim that many were fighting valiantly to survive the harsh winter nights. However, the precise feel of that encounter and what it was like to be inside those moments are still just out of grasp. How humans managed to mentally endure the darkness itself is arguably the greatest enigma. True winter darkness on the frontier is almost unimaginable to modern humans used to electric light. 15 hours of darkness from 4 or 5 p.m. to 7 or 8 a.m. Additionally, burning candles or lamp oil for all those hours was beyond of your price range. with just a faint glimmer of banked embers for light, the most of that period was spent in complete darkness. After 4 or 5 months of 15 hours of darkness every night, what do? You are illiterate. You are unable to work. You have a limited amount of time to talk. You sleep. But even in the cold, nobody gets 15 hours of sleep every night. Prior to the invention of electric lights, sleep habits differed from those of today. Individuals would go through 2 stages of sleep, first sleep and second sleep, interspersed with peaceful awareness. According to frontier journals, this pattern was typical, possibly made worse by the protracted winter darkness. After 3 or 4 hours of sleep, people would naturally awaken at midnight, spend an hour or 2 in calm wakefulness, pray, ponder, and occasionally have a quiet conversation with other waking people, and then go back to sleep until the next morning. It wasn't sleeplessness. It was anticipated, normal, and even appreciated. It was thought to be a quiet, reflective moment to wake up at midnight. Although this biphasic sleep pattern has been present throughout history and in many cultures, it was most noticeable on the frontier. It seemed practically expected given the length of the darkness. Exhausted from the day's work, you would go to sleep soon after dark, but when you woke up 4 hours later, it would still be 8 or 9 hours till daybreak. There were those who made productive use of this awake period. Women would labor silently by feel, knitting, and repairing. Their fingers were so accustomed to the task that they didn't require light. Men would whittle, making little wooden things only with their hands. During the quiet hours, some would pray and recite hymns and prayers they had committed to memory. But during those awake hours in the dark, what were they contemplating? With so much free time, what does the human mind do? The few accounts that mention it merely allow us to speculate. Some talk about making mental lists of things to do in preparation for spring. Others describe a state of awareness and meditation that is similar to sleep. Some people write about praying in the dark to feel near God or spirits. There are also those who write about terror, the terrible weight of darkness, the cold, and the night pushing in the hours until dawn, and the panic caused by how slowly time passes. People have been known to go insane in the winter darkness. According to a Kansas settler, a neighbor started screaming in the middle of the night because he thought the darkness was a live monster that was attempting to choke him. A woman who completely stopped talking for 3 months is mentioned in a Wyoming diary. She didn't start talking again until spring arrived. People were shattered by the cold, darkness, and loneliness in ways that physical suffering alone was unable to. How this affected those who encountered it remains a mystery. What effects did months of intense darkness have on their thoughts, dreams, and sense of self? Although they did not have a term for it, we know that seasonal impacted condition was undoubtedly widespread. Not everyone survived psychologically, but the majority did, as evidenced by the high suicide rates during frontier winters. When spring eventually arrived, they had persevered through the darkness, the cold, and the awful sleep. The following year and the year after that, they repeated the process. There is a part of the human spirit that is strong enough to withstand this. Even in situations that should have been intolerable, people learn to operate even when they are broken and find brief moments of calm and relaxation. The cycle resumes with the emergence of spring. When spring finally arrived, things drastically changed. People were crying with relief on the first day of warmth, according to diaries. Adults standing in sunlight, with their faces turned up like flowers, drinking in the light they'd been denied for so long. Children racing outside and refusing to return inside. As the days became longer, the sleep patterns would progressively return to normal. The dreams that were shared will disappear. Although they will never entirely vanish, the strong relationships made in winter bunkhouses would soften. People would dismantle the complex insulation systems they had built and leave their claustrophobic winter quarters, letting blankets air out. After that, summer would come and go, fall would arrive, and the first chilly nights would serve as a reminder that winter would soon return. Knowing what lay ahead and how much it would cost them, they would start the preparations again. But they persisted, they persevered, they adjusted. The frontier's winter sleep culture emerged out of need. However, it developed into something more, a common experience that united people, challenged and transformed them, and demonstrated the vulnerability and extraordinary fortitude of the human ability to sleep under the most trying circumstances. Thoughts about mystery. Maybe we can take these secrets with us as we slip farther into our own night. The silk-wrapped hot stones, the nights of death sleep, the shared dreams in cramped bunk homes, the incomprehensible sleeping aloves, the 15 hours of darkness and what people did with it. These are not merely historical oddities. They serve as windows into human adaptation, our ability to find purpose and devise survival plans in the face of adversity. The winter sleepers on the frontier did more than simply survive. They made do, they adjusted, they created new customs, drew on local knowledge, and somehow managed to find rest. Not rest that is pleasant or tranquil, but enough to get up, go on, and make it through another day and another night. And there's something profound about that survival, those stolen hours of slumber against all chances, a tribute to the human race's unwavering need to sleep, dream, and close their eyes even in the darkest of conditions. The practice of warming rough rocks in fires, the care with which they were wrapped in priceless silk, and the meager solace they offered during cold nights are all described in the heated stones. Our forefathers' clear-eyed acceptance of risk is revealed by the death-sleep nights. They admit that sleep itself may be lethal, but they refuse to let dread paralyze them. The shared dreams demonstrate how, even in the most hopeless situations, people strive for purpose and connection, constructing common imaginary worlds in the face of adversity in the real world. People were eager to attempt anything, to experiment with the most weird solutions. If there was even a chance, they may bring warmth or rest, as evidenced by the strange sleeping aloves and underground pits. We are reminded by the 15 hours of darkness that our predecessors lived in a sensory environment that was entirely different from our own, where natural rhythms predominated and artificial light was a luxury rather than a constant. Soft and far away like snowflakes are the riddles. Perhaps as we give in to our own cozy sleep tonight, we may pay tribute to those who slept in the cold and be amazed that they did so, even though we can never truly understand what it was like. They slept, woke up, and made it through. They managed to find ways to relax their bodies and minds over months of what should have been intolerable cold and darkness. They developed sleep-related customs and rituals that made them more resilient. They shared the long, dark hours, the warmth, and the dreams. They had survived yet another winter by the time spring arrived, It was not a given that they would survive. Numerous people lost their lives. Many others suffered injuries that would never completely heal and were irreversibly altered. However, it testifies to something extraordinary about the human spirit, that frontier villages continued to exist and that people came back year after year to endure another winter. We are beings that require sleep, even in the most dire circumstances. And no matter how odd or desperate those methods may be, we will find a way to accomplish it. The Wild West frontier's winter slumber culture serves as a stark reminder of this reality. People on the verge of extinction, still dreaming, still longing for morning, still closing their eyes. Let's shift our focus to a different type of winter sleep as dawn light finally breaks through the frozen terrain of our journey. This type of sleep is experienced in relative warmth, in imported comfort, behind locked doors and windows with actual glass. Because while the majority of people living on the frontier struggled through winter nights in cramped bunkhouses and drafty cabins, a tiny percentage enjoyed benefits that looked almost outrageous in contrast. But the icy fingers of the boundary reached even their sleep. In the Wild West, even wealth could not completely protect from cold. The entirety of frontier life, all its injustices, frailties, and peculiar times where privilege vanished and everyone became equally human against the cold, may be found in the difference between their experience and that of the average sleeper. In the winter of 1875, the newly built Brown Palace Hotel in Denver served as a symbol of civilization's triumph over the natural world. The weather had delayed its grand opening. Construction was halted by early snows, but by December it opened its doors to its first visitors, who were shown rooms that promised comfort that was unthinkable for people living only a few miles outside the city limits. The hotel's bedrooms had mattresses filled with real goose down instead of prairie straw, brass bedsteads sent from Chicago, and quilts made by skilled seamstresses rather than pieced together from leftovers. Every room featured a fireplace with a functioning damper that precisely regulated the flow of heat and smoke, something that residents of sod houses could only imagine. The double-paned glass windows were such an extravagant luxury that occasionally visitors would simply stand and gaze through them, in awe of their clarity and ability to block out the wind without creating a continuous whistling draft. Here's what the hotel ads failed to disclose, though. It was never completely safe to sleep in a frontier winter, even in these elegant accommodations. Despite their superiority, the stoves still needed wood, and storms may disrupt the supply of wood. The employees in charge of keeping the fires in the guest rooms worked non-stop, but they were unable to keep up on the coldest nights. Visitors would awaken to discover frost growing on the inside of those pricey windows, their breath misting in the air, and their water bottles frozen solid. One visitor, a Boston Railroad investor, described in his journal how the fire had died as he slept, leaving his room as chilly as a tomb when he woke up at 3 a.m. Another pleasure was having someone to call for when he rang for service, but the night staff was overworked. At the same time, each room required attention. After an hour of waiting, bundled up in his overcoat and all the blankets from his bed, a tired youngster came with coal and wood to rekindle his fire. He stated, "I was both ashamed of my complaints and thankful that I was not among the miners I'd seen that afternoon, sleeping in their rudimentary shelters up in the mountains. It's odd that while living in the same area, our winters are so dissimilar. Numerous reports of elite frontier slumber share this awareness, this odd consciousness of the gap. The privileged were compelled to learn about the conditions outside their cozy confines. Every day they witnessed it. From the drafty huts came their servants. The stables where their coachmen slept were no warmer than the outside. It was impossible to deny the obvious, palpable difference between their slumber and that of the typical frontier resident. A distinct elite developed in Deadwood during the gold rush. Men who had unexpectedly and spectacularly become wealthy and who showed signs of both desperation and inventiveness in how they spent their newfound wealth. Samuel Granger was one such man who made his wealth by purchasing a claim from a disheartened prospector for almost nothing. In less than 6 months, he constructed a 2-story home that the locals dubbed Grayers' Folly. It had plastered walls, actual wooden flooring, and a second-floor bedroom with a cast-iron stove that was shipped from St. Louis. His bed was renowned. At an incredible cost, he had it delivered in sections up the Missouri River and then overland by wagon after commissioning it from a San Francisco furniture maker. With columns that extended almost to the ceiling and a canopy of velvet drapes that could be drawn closed to create a cozy, dark area inside a room, it was made of mahogany. He had blankets of merino wool and sheets of Egyptian cotton, and the mattress had horsehair over springs. Real springs, not rope webbing. A palace by frontier standards, this bed was. It was mentioned in odded tones by men who saw it. It felt like something from a fairy tale to sleep in such luxury and warmth during the Deadwood winter. However, Granger himself characterized his sleep as difficult in a letter to his sister back in Philadelphia. Compared to home, this place has a strange silence. He wrote, "It is not peaceful silence, it is waiting silence. I lie in my fine bed and hear the wind and know it is trying to get in. The house cacks and settles. I think of the men sleeping rough in the gulches and feel strange about my comfort. Not guilty exactly, but strange, as if I am play acting at civilization while the real world waits just outside." He also mentioned something else, that despite his warm room and fine bed, he often woke in the night and couldn't return to sleep. He'd light a lamp and read, or simply lie there thinking. The comfort, he suggested, was almost too much. His body didn't trust it. Some part of him remained alert, waiting for the cold to return, for the luxury to be revealed as temporary. This restlessness appears in other accounts from frontier elite, a kind of psychological inability to fully relax even when physical conditions were favorable, as if sleeping too comfortably felt dangerous, like letting your guard down in enemy territory. The truly wealthy, the railroad barons, the big ranch owners, the territorial governors, often maintained 2 residences. They'd have their fine houses in growing cities like Denver, San Francisco, or even back east. But they'd also have frontier properties where business required their presence. And winter travel between these properties became its own peculiar ordeal, one where wealth provided options, but not immunity. A woman named Caroline Mason, wife of a cattle baron who owned vast ranges in Wyoming, kept detailed journals of her winter travels between their Denver home and their ranch headquarters. The contrast between her sleeping arrangements night-twite is almost comical in its extremity. In Denver, she slept in a 4-poster bed with a feather mattress in a room heated by a modern coal furnace that piped warmth through metal registers. Her nightgowns were silk and flannel, her bedroom slippers lined with rabbit fur. She had a maid who would warm her sheets with a long-handled brass pan filled with coals before she retired. But when business called her husband north to the ranch, she accompanied him. And then she slept in stagecoach way stations, rough buildings where a dozen travelers might crowd into a single room, sharing beds with strangers, hoping the fleas wouldn't be too bad. She slept in hotel rooms in cattle towns where the walls were so thin she could hear conversations in adjacent rooms, and where the stove's heat was controlled by whoever woke first, not by her preference. She slept on one memorable occasion when a storm stranded their coach in the coach itself, pulled off the trail and half buried in snow, huddled with the other passengers under every blanket and coat they possessed. "I have slept in the finest hotels in New York and Paris," she wrote, after that particular incident. "And I have slept in a frozen stagecoach listening to wolves." Sometimes these experiences are separated by mere weeks. This territory makes strange Democrats of us all, at least when it comes to winter. Her journals reveal something important. Wealth in the frontier context was precarious. It could buy you comfort, but that comfort was conditional. Always at risk of being stripped away by weather, by travel, by the simple realities of distance and isolation, the elite could not entirely separate themselves from the frontier's harshness. They could only negotiate with it, finding moments of softness within larger patterns of difficulty. The social rituals around sleep among the frontier elite are fascinating in their own right. In established towns, as winter set in, the wealthy would gather for evening socials that extended late into the night. Dinners, card games, musical performances in parlor, warmed by stoves that consumed wood at prodigious rates. These gatherings were partly about entertainment and partly about defying the winter darkness, asserting that civilization could maintain its rhythms even here, even now. But they also had a practical function. Traveling home after such events through dark and cold streets was dangerous. So hosting families would often offer their guests the option to stay overnight. This created a peculiar intimacy where social peers would suddenly find themselves sleeping in the same house, sometimes sharing rooms or even beds in the old tradition of bundling that most had thought left behind in earlier centuries. A Denver socialite named Margaret Whitfield described in her correspondence the awkwardness of waking in a guest room to find frost on the windows and the fire long dead. Then having to make her way downstairs in yesterday's evening dress to join her hosts for breakfast, everyone pretending that this situation was perfectly normal and dignified. "We maintain the forms," she wrote, "even when the conditions make them somewhat absurd. We dress for dinner, even though we may all sleep in our clothes afterward. We use the good china even when the water is frozen and the washing must wait for spring. There's comfort in the rituals, I suppose, even when they serve no practical purpose. This performance of civilization, this insistence on maintaining standards, even in conditions that made them difficult, was central to elite identity on the frontier. Sleep was part of that performance. You were supposed to retire at a respectable hour to maintain privacy and dignity, to wake refreshed and properly dressed. The fact that this was often impossible didn't stop people from trying. The architecture of elite sleeping spaces tells its own story. In the grand houses that survive from this era, the bedrooms are revealing. They're positioned on upper floors, which should have made them warmer. Heat rises, but which also made them more exposed to wind. They have multiple windows, which provided light and air, but also let in cold. They're often surprisingly small, these bedrooms, despite the house's overall grandeur. Why? Because smaller rooms were easier to heat. Even the wealthy understood this practical reality. You might have a large drawing room or dining hall for entertaining, but your bedroom, where you spent your most vulnerable hours, was kept compact. Many elite homes featured sleeping porches, enclosed but unheated spaces where people slept in the belief that cold, fresh air was healthier than warm, stale indoor air. This was a fashionable health theory in the late 19th century, and the frontier's wealthy embraced it with enthusiasm, perhaps partly because it gave them a way to frame choosing to sleep in cold conditions as a sophisticated health choice rather than a necessity. One such sleeping porch survives in a mansion in Montana, now a museum. It's glassed in on 3 sides with a narrow bed and a small table. A placard explains that the lady of the house slept there year-round, believing it prevented consumption and promoted vitality. What the placard doesn't mention is that the bedroom immediately adjacent with its large fireplace and heavy curtains was also maintained and used by her husband. They slept separately, he in warmth, she in cold, each believing they'd made the correct choice for their health. Modern visitors often find this baffling, but it speaks to something important about how people understood sleep and health in that era. Comfort wasn't always the goal. Sometimes discomfort was sought, believed to be strengthening. The elite could afford to make these choices. The poor simply endured whatever conditions they had. Servants' quarters in elite frontier homes present their own sad contrast. While their employers slept in rooms with fireplaces and fine linens, domestic workers were housed in attics, basement, or separate outbuildings where winter conditions were barely better than the crude cabins of settlers. A cook named Mary Chen, who worked for a wealthy family in Sacramento, but traveled with them to their summer ranch in the Sierra Nevada foothills, wrote letters to her sister in San Francisco describing the arrangements. The family's bedrooms had feather beds and wool blankets. The servants' quarters, a converted barn loft, had straw mattresses and whatever coverings each servant had brought with them. They do not think of us as feeling the cold, the same as they do, she wrote, or perhaps they think of it, but find it inconvenient to do anything about. I share a bed with 2 other girls for warmth. We sleep in all our clothes. In the morning, the water in the basin is frozen, and we must warm it over a candle before we can wash. Then we go downstairs and serve them breakfast in the warm dining room, and they complain if the food is not hot enough. This matter-of-fact description of inequality runs through many servants' accounts. There's rarely anger in these writings, or if there is, it's muted, careful. More common is a kind of weary acceptance. This is how things are. The wealthy sleep warm, the poor sleep cold, and everyone knows it. But occasionally, circumstances would create moments of forced equality. During severe blizzards, when keeping multiple fires going became impossible, households would sometimes consolidate, family and servants crowding into 1 or 2 rooms where a single large fire could be maintained. These emergency situations broke down social barriers in ways that were both necessary and deeply uncomfortable for everyone involved. A territorial judge's daughter described such a situation in her diary, a storm in 1882 that trapped their household for 5 days. We all slept in the drawing room, she wrote. our mattresses laid out on the floor around the great fireplace. Father and mother, my sisters and I, and also our cook, Mrs. Patterson, and our housemaid, Annie. The first night was strange beyond words. We did not know where to look or how to behave, but by the third night, we were simply human beings, keeping each other alive, and the strangeness had worn away. I learned that Annie snores, and that Mrs. Patterson prays aloud before sleeping, and these small intimacies would have been unthinkable before the storm. When the weather cleared and normal arrangements resumed, she noted that everyone seemed relieved to return to their proper places. Yet something had shifted. I cannot see Annie now without remembering her lying beside us in the firelight. We are not the same as equals, but neither are we as separate as before. The children of the frontier elite had their own peculiar relationship with winter sleep. Many were sent east for education, spending winters in boarding schools where heating was better and conditions more predictable. But those who remained experienced a strange duality. Comfort in their own homes mixed with awareness of the broader frontier reality. A boy named Thomas Everett, son of a mine owner in Colorado, wrote in a school composition about his winter nights. At home, he had a bedroom to himself, a luxury most frontier children never knew. His father had installed a small stove in his room, and he had warm quilts and a feather pillow. But he also wrote about lying awake, listening to the wind, thinking about the miners who worked his father's claims, knowing they slept in crude barracks up in the mountains. I feel guilty for my warmth, he wrote with the directness of childhood, but guilty enough to give it up. Does this make me a bad person? I do not know. Father says we have earned our comfort through hard work and risk. But I did not work or risk. I was simply born to it. This consciousness, this awareness of unearned privilege, threads through accounts from frontier elite children. They were raised to understand that their comfort was not universal, not guaranteed, not entirely deserved. And this shaped their sleep, adding a layer of psychological complexity to what should have been simple rest. As the frontier era progressed into the 1880s and 1890s, the gap between elite and common sleep experiences began to widen in some ways and narrow in others. Towns grew more established, infrastructure improved, hotels became more numerous and more standardized. The wealthy could increasingly insulate themselves from frontier hardships, but winter remained winter. The cold still came, storms still trapped people, and geography still enforced a kind of democracy. When you were caught on the trail between towns, your bank account couldn't summon shelter that didn't exist. There's a particular account that captures this beautifully. In 1888, a wealthy businessman named Robert Chandler was traveling from Cheyenne to Denver by private rail car. The ultimate frontier luxury, a fully appointed car with sleeping berths, a small stove, carpeting, and curtained windows. But a massive blizzard, later called the school children's blizzard, stranded his car on the tracks. The stove's coal ran out, the food supplies were limited, and for 3 days, Chandler and his companions, including his wife and their personal secretary, experienced what thousands of ordinary frontier people experienced all the time. His wife's diary from those days is striking. She describes the cold seeping in as the car's warmth dissipated, the way they huddled together under their fine blankets that were suddenly insufficient, the fear that the storm might never end, and then after they were finally rescued, her strange reluctance to return to normal life. I understand now, she wrote, what it means to truly need warmth and shelter. Before this, comfort was just my natural state. Now I know it as something specific, something precious. I sleep differently now. I notice my bed's warmth. I'm grateful for the weight of blankets. Perhaps this is a gift from the storm, though a harsh teacher it was. The elite of the Wild West frontier never fully escaped winter's reach. They could build better walls, buy finer blankets, hire servants to tend their fires. But the cold remained, the isolation remained, the darkness remained, and sleep, for all of them, rich and poor alike, remained a fragile thing, a daily negotiation with forces that didn't care about wealth or status. In this, perhaps there's a kind of equality. After all, not in comfort. The differences there were real and profound, but in vulnerability. Everyone who slept in the winter frontier was at some level defenseless. Everyone closed their eyes, not entirely certain of what morning would bring. Everyone listened to the wind and wondered if their shelter would hold. The wealthy had advantages, certainly better odds of comfort and survival, but they didn't have certainty. No one did. And in that shared uncertainty, that common vulnerability, we find something almost tender, a reminder that some things level us all. That winter asks the same fundamental question of every sleeper. Will you wake? Most did. Rich and poor, comfortable and suffering, they woke to another day. And in the simple fact of their waking, of their persistence, through one more night, there's something worth honoring. The frontier asked much of those who settled it, but perhaps it asked most during the long winter nights, when all distinctions of wealth and status faded into the common human need for rest, for warmth, for the simple miracle of opening your eyes to morning light. And so we arrive finally at the end of our journey through the frozen nights of the Wild West. The fire in our imagined hearth has burned low. The darkness outside has perhaps softened toward dawn, or perhaps you've drifted through this entire story in the timeless space that exists between waking and sleep. Either way, it's time now to gather the threads of what we've seen and carry them gently toward rest. We began by asking what it meant to sleep when winter froze the frontier solid, when survival itself was uncertain and comfort was a luxury most could never afford. We walked through drafty cabins where breath turned to frost on the inside walls. We crawled with hue glass across impossible distances, sleeping in bare hide under merciless stars. We touched the mysteries of shared dreams and death sleep nights, of heated stones wrapped in precious fabric, of indigenous wisdom that understood what the newcomers were still learning. And we saw how even wealth could not entirely protect against winter's reach, how the cold found ways into even the finest bedrooms. What emerges from all these stories, all these fragments of the past, is something both simple and profound. People slept against all odds through conditions that seem unimaginable to us now. They closed their eyes and surrendered to rest, not because they were braver than we are, or stronger or more resilient, but because they had no choice. The body demands sleep. Life requires rest. And so they found ways, however imperfect, however uncomfortable, to give themselves what they needed to continue. Think for a moment about the distance between their sleep and yours. You lie now, perhaps in a room whose temperature is controlled by a thermostat, a device that would have seemed like pure magic to a frontier settler. Your walls are insulated, your windows sealed, your roof solid and waterproof. If you feel cold, you can adjust a dial or pull up an extra blanket from your closet where you have more blankets than any frontier family owned in total. You are safe from wolves and weather. You are warm without effort. You can sleep without vigilance. This is no small thing. This is a victory so complete we barely notice it anymore. But it was won by those who came before, who endured the cold nights, who learned through bitter experience what worked and what didn't, who built better shelters and passed that knowledge forward generation by generation until warmth became ordinary instead of miraculous. The frontier sleepers didn't know they were part of this progression. They were simply trying to survive winter after winter. But their persistence, their refusal to give up even when sleep became a test of endurance, that created the foundation for everything that came after. There's a particular quality to winter sleep that we've traced throughout this journey. It's not the deep, peaceful rest of safety and comfort. It's something more fragile, more aware. The frontier sleepers never quite let go. Some part of them remained alert, listening for danger, monitoring their own bodies for signs of cold's encroachment. They slept lightly, woke frequently, drifted back under repeatedly through the long, dark hours. Modern sleep science tells us this is poor quality sleep. It's fragmented, insufficient for proper rest and healing. And yet, they survived on it. Not just survived, they built towns, raised children, pursued dreams, created the framework of a society, all while sleeping poorly, night after night, month after month after. There's something almost heroic in this. Though it wasn't meant to be heroic, it was simply what was required, the quiet, unheroic persistence of ordinary people doing what must be done. Closing their eyes despite the cold, breathing slowly despite their fear, trusting that morning would come, even when the night seemed endless. And morning always came. The sun always rose, pale and cold, but present, breaking the darkness one more time. The frontier sleepers would wake, stiff, tired, still cold, and they would begin again. The rhythm of survival repeated endlessly until eventually winter loosened its grip and spring returned. We cannot truly know what their experience felt like. We can read their words, examine their artifacts, reconstruct their shelters, and study their conditions. But the interior experience, what it felt like to be cold for so long that cold became your natural state, what it felt like to drift towards sleep, uncertain if you'd wake, what dreams came in those circumstances and what they meant. This remains beyond our reach. Perhaps that's as it should be. Perhaps some experiences belong entirely to those who lived them. We can honor the frontier sleepers without fully understanding them. We can acknowledge their struggle without appropriating it. We can be grateful for what they endured without romanticizing it. Because it wasn't romantic. It was cold and uncomfortable and frightening and exhausting. It damaged bodies and broke spirits and claimed lives. Not every winter sleeper woke in the spring. Not every family survived intact. The frontier was beautiful in many ways, but the winter nights were not among its beauties. They were its test, its cruelty, its way of separating those who could endure from those who could not. And yet, people did endure. More than that, they found moments of warmth, even in the cold. The comfort of another body sharing your blankets. The brief pleasure of heated stones wrapped in cloth. The satisfaction of banking a fire just right so it lasted through the night. The relief of waking to find everyone safe. Everyone breathing another night survived. Small victories, but real ones. Enough to keep going. enough to try again the next night and the next. As you drift now toward your own sleep, warm, safe, comfortable beyond the wildest dreams of any frontier settler, perhaps you can carry with you an awareness of this inheritance. The warmth you enjoy was not always available. The security you feel was not always certain. What seems ordinary to you was extraordinary to them, worth suffering for, worth building toward, worth all those cold nights endured in the hope that someday, somehow, it would get better. And it did get better. Slowly, incrementally, over generations, the cabins became houses. The houses gained insulation. The stoves improved. The understanding of how to build for cold climates deepened. Knowledge accumulated was shared, was refined. Each winter taught its lessons, and those lessons were not forgotten. You are the beneficiary of all that learning, all that suffering, all those nights when people refused to surrender to the cold. Your comfortable bed, your warm room, your peaceful sleep. These were built on a foundation of thousands of uncomfortable nights endured by people whose names we'll never know. This is worth remembering, not to make you feel guilty for your comfort, but to help you appreciate it fully. To sleep warm is a privilege, and like all privileges, it's made more meaningful by awareness of what came before. The frontier winter nights are long gone now. The last people who slept in those conditions, who truly knew what it meant to winter on the raw edge of settlement, have been dead for decades. Their cabins have collapsed into earth, their beds rotted away, their blankets dissolved into dust. The physical evidence of their sleep has mostly vanished. But something remains in the accounts they left, in the stories passed down, in the simple fact that they survived and we are here. Their experience echoes forward. We are connected to them through this most basic human need, the need to rest, to close our eyes, to surrender to sleep even when circumstances suggest we should. Remain vigilant. They slept in the cold so that eventually someone, us, could sleep in warmth. They endured so that endurance would not always be necessary. They persisted so that persistence could one day give way to ease. This is their gift to us, but real. And perhaps the best way to honor it is simply to sleep well, to let ourselves sink into comfortable rest without guilt, but with gratitude, to close our eyes knowing we are safe, and to remember just for a moment before sleep takes us, that this safety was not always available. Outside your window, the world continues. Perhaps it's winter where you are now, or perhaps summer. Perhaps you're falling asleep in darkness or in morning light. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you have shelter, you have warmth, you have the luxury of sleep that is restful rather than merely sufficient. The frontier sleepers would envy you this, but they would also be glad for you. They didn't endure those hard winters because they enjoyed suffering. They endured because they hoped for something better for themselves, if possible, for their children, if not for someone someday. And here you are, the fulfillment of that hope, sleeping in the warmth they could only imagine. So sleep well tonight. Let yourself drift without resistance, without the vigilance that frontier nights demanded. Trust your walls to hold, your roof to remain solid, your warmth to last until morning. Trust that you will wake, that morning will come, that the cold cannot reach you here. And if you dream, perhaps you'll dream of winter, not the brutal winters of the Wild West, but a gentler winter seen from inside a warm room, snow falling soft beyond the glass, stars bright and cold but distant, the world beautiful because you are safe from it, comfortable because others were not. This is the gift of all those who slept in the cold, that we don't have to, that their endurance earned our ease, that the nights they suffered through have finally given way to nights of peace. The fire has died to embers, now the story is told. The long winter night of the frontier has passed into history, and we remain here in our own time with our own warm beds waiting. Rest well, knowing you are safe. Sleep deeply, honoring those who could not. And when you wake, as you will, as they did morning after morning, perhaps you'll notice just for a moment how good it feels to wake warm. How miraculous it is to have survived the night without struggle. How far we've come from those frozen cabins and crude bedrolls under merciless stars. The frontier sleepers would tell you if they could. Sleep is a gift, warmth is a blessing, and the ability to close your eyes without fear is something to treasure every single night. So treasure it now. Let the weight of your blankets comfort you. Let the warmth of your room hold you. Let the darkness be peaceful rather than threatening. Let sleep come easy, as it rarely came to them, and drift now gently into rest. The winter nights of the Wild West are over. Your winter night, warm, safe, soft, is here. Close your eyes, breathe slowly. Let go. The cold cannot reach you now. Thank you for wandering through another quiet corner of history with me tonight. If this slow story brought you a little peace, feel free to subscribe. I share fresh, gentle stories almost each day. There's another calm tale waiting on the screen, or you can simply tap below to join our circle of nighttime historians. Sleep well until the next